She was sitting alone at twin sister's wedding until a billionaire said, "Pretend you with me." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The string lights above shimmered like 1,000 tiny stars as laughter rippled through the beachside reception. Elena sat at the far end of the table, her hands wrapped around a half-empty champagne glass, pretending to enjoy the view of the ocean. The air smelled of salt and perfume, of celebration and everything she no longer belonged to. Across the dance floor, her twin sister Alyssa glowed in a white gown, laughing in the arms of her new husband, the same man Elena had once loved. Every camera flash felt like a dagger. She tried to smile, but the muscles in her face refused to move. The guests whispered. "Poor thing," someone muttered. "Imagine watching your sister marry your ex." Elena looked away, blinking hard, willing the tears not to fall. Her dress was borrowed, her heels a little too tight, and her heart barely holding together. She had promised her mother she would come, just to keep peace in the family. After tonight, she planned to disappear from this city for good. She was halfway through counting the seconds until she could leave when a shadow fell across her table. A tall man in a black tuxedo stood there, his presence cutting through the noise like a cold wind. His face was familiar from business magazines' sharp jawline, dark eyes that missed nothing, and the quiet confidence of someone used to owning entire boardrooms. Adrian Cole, the billionaire investor everyone whispered about but few had ever spoken to. Elena froze as he leaned closer, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "If you do not want them to pity you," he said, "pretend you are with me." For a heartbeat, she thought she misheard him. "Excuse me?" she stammered. Adrian's expression did not change. "You can keep staring at your glass, or you can stand up, walk with me, and make them wonder why the richest man in the room cannot take his eyes off you." The band played louder, masking their voices, but Elena felt the weight of every eye around them. Her pulse raced. "Why would you do that?" she whispered. "Because," he said, offering his hand, "you look like you need a little saving tonight. And I could use a little distraction." Something in his tone was neither flirtation nor pity. It was control softened by empathy, a man used to making offers that changed lives. Her instinct screamed to say no, but the way people looked at her, the pity, the judgment made her spine stiffen. Maybe pretending was easier than feeling broken. She placed her hand in his. Adrian's grip was steady, warm. He guided her toward the dance floor, and in an instant the whispers changed. "Who is she? Is that Adrian Cole's date?" Cameras turned. The crowd parted. The music swelled. For the first time that night, Elena lifted her chin, meeting her sister's shocked gaze from across the room. In that silent stare between them, something shifted. Elena was no longer the girl left behind. As Adrian spun her gently under the string lights, she caught her reflection in the mirrored glass behind him. For the first time in months, she almost recognized the woman looking back. Not a victim, not the twin, just herself alive, if only for a dance. The dance ended, but the eyes around them did not look away. When the song faded, Adrian guided Elena off the floor with the same quiet certainty he had shown when he first approached her. The ocean wind carried the scent of salt and roses as they stepped onto the terrace overlooking the glowing waves. For a moment, neither spoke. The laughter and music behind them blurred into a distant hum. Elena finally found her voice. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Adrian leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Maybe I saw someone who deserved better than pity." His tone was calm, unreadable. "Or maybe I was tired of the gossip aimed at both of us." "Both of us?" Elena frowned. He smiled slightly. "People here have long memories. I once dated the bride's college friend. Now they think I am here to cause a scene. You looked like the perfect distraction. So, we helped each other," she said quietly. "Exactly," he replied, turning toward her. "But I do not do charity, miss." "Elena," she said, lifting her chin. "Elena Hart." "Miss Hart?" he repeated, his voice steady, almost formal. "I am Adrian Cole. You probably already know that." She nodded. "Everyone knows who you are. Then you also know I do not enjoy being a headline." He took a deep breath and added, "There is a dinner next week. Business and politics, nothing exciting. If you join me as my +1, it will silence the rumors." In return, I will make a small investment in your work. I heard you design handcrafted jewelry. Elena blinked. How did you? Your friend, the florist, mentioned it when she congratulated the bride. You look surprised. I pay attention. She hesitated, her mind racing. Why me? Because, Adrian said, you looked honest, and honesty is rare where I live. The waves crashed softly below. Elena stared at her reflection in the glass door, wondering if she was making another mistake. But something about his voice carried quiet conviction. A business arrangement? She asked. 1 week, he said. You attend the events. I sponsor your next exhibit. No emotions. No complications. And when the week ends, we go back to our own lives. He extended his hand again, the same gesture that had changed the course of her night. Do we have a deal? For a heartbeat, she saw the room behind them, her sister twirling in her gown, her mother smiling through tears, and realized she had been living in their story for too long. Maybe it was time to write her own. She took his hand. Deal. The following morning, Elena woke to a new message on her phone. A car will pick you up at noon. Formal attire. Adrian Cole. She stared at the screen, half amused, half terrified. By noon, she stood outside her small apartment, clutching the only dress she owned that could pass for elegant. The black sedan waiting at the curb gleamed like a mirror. The driver opened the door without a word. Inside, the leather smelled faintly of cedar and rain. The city blurred past as they drove toward downtown. When the car stopped, she looked up to see a glass tower piercing the sky. Cole Industries, she whispered. The receptionist led her through marble halls until she reached the top floor. Adrian stood by a wall of windows, sunlight outlining his figure. You are early, he said, smiling faintly. Good. I like punctual people. He gestured toward a portfolio on the table. These are the event schedules. 3 dinners, 1 charity gala, 1 press interview. We will be seen together, nothing more. Elena scanned the papers, feeling the weight of the world she was stepping into. You really planned all this? I do not improvise, Adrian said. If we are pretending, it must be convincing. He looked at her for a long moment. Do you understand what you are agreeing to, Elena? That you want me to play a role? She said quietly. And that maybe, for once, I do not mind pretending. Adrian's gaze softened. Then let us begin. Outside, the city shimmered in the afternoon sun, unaware that 2 strangers had just signed an invisible contract, one built on pride, survival, and something neither of them dared to name yet. By the time evening arrived, Elena stood in front of a tall mirror inside Adrian's private penthouse. The skyline glowed behind her through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a sea of light stretching endlessly over New York. She wore a midnight blue gown that Adrian's assistant had delivered earlier, its fabric smooth and cold beneath her fingertips. It did not feel like hers. Nothing in this world felt like hers. When the elevator doors opened, Adrian stepped out in a black suit that fit him with quiet precision. He looked at her for a moment, then said simply, You clean up well, Miss Hart. She smiled nervously. I am trying not to trip in these heels. If you do, I will catch you, he replied without a hint of humor. And for a heartbeat, her chest tightened. They left together for the first dinner event at a downtown art foundation. Cameras flashed as they arrived, their arms linked. Adrian moved with practiced ease, greeting donors, shaking hands with politicians, while Elena stayed a step behind, her pulse drumming in her ears. Every glance felt like a test she might fail. But when one of the guests asked about her work, she lifted her chin and spoke about her designs, her passion for turning discarded materials into beauty. Adrian listened quietly, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly as if seeing something no one else noticed. Later that night, when they returned to the car, he said, You were remarkable in there. She looked out the window, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. I was terrified. No one could tell. You sound surprised. I am, he admitted. You belong in rooms like that more than most people I know. His words sank deep into her chest, strange and dangerous. Over the next few days, the illusion of their arrangement grew stronger. There was the charity auction where Adrian bid on one of her pieces without telling her, the press interview where he called her the most genuine person I have met, and the board dinner where his business partners watched them with open curiosity. Every event was a performance, but somewhere between the forced smiles and polite handshakes, something began to shift. One night, as the car wound through the city after another endless dinner, Elena leaned her head against the window. I do not know how you do it, she murmured. All those people pretending to care. You get used to it, Adrian said quietly. You stop expecting sincerity. That sounds lonely. It is, he said after a pause. But I am learning it does not have to be. She turned to him then, meeting his eyes in the dim glow of the streetlights. The air between them changed. It was not romantic yet, but it was no longer a transaction either. Back at the penthouse, Elena walked toward the balcony to breathe. The city stretched beneath her like a living map, every light a heartbeat. Adrian joined her a few moments later, 2 glasses of wine in hand. You should see yourself, he said softly. You look like you belong up here. Maybe, she said. But my world is still down there, somewhere between the art shops and the subway. You make that sound like a bad thing. It is not, she answered. At least down there, people are real. He nodded, setting his glass down. That is exactly why I wanted you in my world. The silence that followed was full, not empty. Somewhere in that quiet, she realized he was not as untouchable as he seemed. His eyes carried exhaustion, regret, and something raw she could not name. Adrian, she asked softly, why did you choose me really? He hesitated before answering. Because you remind me what honesty feels like. I had forgotten. The words lingered in the air like a confession neither of them expected to make. For the first time, the city below felt smaller than the space between them. When she finally went to her room that night, Elena could still feel his gaze on her, not possessive, not cold, simply human. And though she told herself it was only an arrangement, her heart no longer believed it. The following morning, Elena found herself seated across from Adrian in his office, the skyline spilling sunlight over the glass walls. Between them lay a document printed on thick paper, crisp and deliberate. Our arrangement? Adrian said, sliding it toward her. You will attend all public events with me for the next 7 days. You will maintain discretion, and I will provide financial support for your next jewelry line. His tone was calm, professional, but there was something deeper in his gaze, something that contradicted the words on the page. Elena scanned the paper. There were bullet points, signatures, and a section titled Termination Clause. It all felt too real, too transactional. You want me to sign this? She asked. It keeps things clear, he replied. No misunderstandings. She stared at the pen, hesitating. And what happens if either of us breaks one of these rules? Adrian met her eyes. Then we talk. Like adults. She exhaled slowly and signed her name. The pen felt heavy, as though sealing more than a contract. That evening, the two appeared at a corporate banquet hosted by one of Adrian's partners. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and champagne, every conversation polished to perfection. Elena had never been surrounded by so much gold and so little warmth. Adrian stayed close, guiding her through introductions, deflecting intrusive questions with charm. But even in that world of tailored smiles, she noticed how people looked at him not with admiration, but with calculation. They respect your money, she said quietly when they stepped aside. Not you. He gave a dry laugh. Respect is always rented in this business. And when the lease ends, then you find out who was never pretending. His words carried a weight she did not expect. Later that night, when the crowd thinned, a woman in a silver dress approached. Her tone was smooth, but her smile was sharp. Adrian, you did not tell me you had moved on so quickly. Good evening, Victoria, he said evenly. I was not aware I needed to update you. You always do, she said, glancing at Elena with obvious disdain. This must be temporary. Adrian's voice cooled. Her name is Elena, and yes, temporary arrangements have a way of lasting longer than intended. The woman blinked, momentarily speechless, then turned away. Elena stood still, her pulse racing. Who was she? She asked when they reached the car. An old lesson, Adrian said. One that cost me more than I care to admit. The ride back was quiet. The city glowed outside, alive and restless. When they reached the penthouse, Elena slipped off her heels and leaned against the balcony door. You do not have to protect me from people like her, she said softly. I can handle them. I know you can, Adrian replied, pouring 2 glasses of water instead of wine. But I wanted to. She looked at him, surprised. Why? Because you are the only person who has walked into my life without wanting anything from me. That is not true, she said, half smiling. You are funding my work. Yes, he said, stepping closer. But you did not ask me to. The silence stretched between them, fragile and magnetic. Elena felt her heart betray her logic. This was supposed to be business. Yet every word he spoke seemed to erase the distance the contract had built. You are breaking your own rule, she whispered. Rule number 3. No personal attachment. Maybe, Adrian said, his voice low, almost a confession. But rules were written by people afraid of risk. She looked up at him, the city lights reflected in her eyes. And you are not afraid? Of losing? Always, he said. Of feeling something real again? Maybe not anymore. The wind moved through the open glass doors, carrying the faint sound of traffic far below. In that quiet moment, surrounded by glass and sky, Elena realized that the line between pretending and becoming had already begun to blur. She did not know if it was the beginning of something real or just another illusion, but for the first time, she did not want to run from it. By the end of the week, the line between truth and performance had blurred beyond recognition. Elena had grown used to the weight of Adrian's hand resting lightly against her back, to the way he leaned close when cameras flashed, and the way his gaze lingered longer than necessary when no one was watching. The final event on their schedule was the annual Carter Foundation Gala, a sprawling charity night filled with the city's most powerful people. Adrian's company was a major sponsor, and the entire evening would be covered by the press. When Elena entered the ballroom in a silver gown that shimmered like water, the murmurs started instantly. "That is Adrian Cole's new partner," someone whispered. "She is not from his usual circle." Adrian met her at the top of the stairs, offering his arm. "You look," he paused, choosing the word carefully, "like trouble for anyone who underestimates you." She smiled softly, her nerves momentarily forgotten. As the evening unfolded, she found herself speaking more confidently, her laughter easy and genuine. Guests asked about her designs, and even the skeptical board members seemed charmed. But halfway through dinner, a commotion rippled through the crowd. A journalist had gotten hold of something in an envelope, passed quietly between tables. Within minutes, screens around the room lit up with notifications. Headlines appeared on phones and tablets. Adrian Cole's girlfriend revealed to be a paid companion. Elena's blood ran cold. She felt hundreds of eyes turned toward her. Adrian rose instantly, his jaw tightening. "Stay here," he said, but she shook her head. "No, they are talking about me." Whispers thickened into accusations. "So it was all fake," someone said. "He hired her." Adrian turned toward the room, his voice cutting through the noise. Enough, but it was too late. Cameras were already clicking, capturing her shock, her humiliation. Elena's vision blurred. "You told me this would be about business," she said under her breath. "It was," he insisted, "until it was not. And now everyone thinks I am your mistake." She stepped back, tears burning behind her eyes. "I cannot be part of this circus, Adrian." He reached for her, but she pulled away. "Do not." The sound of her heels against the marble floor echoed through the silence as she left the ballroom. Rain was falling outside, light and relentless. By the time Adrian caught up to her under the awning, she was already soaked. "Elena, wait," he said, his voice breaking the calm facade he always wore. "You have to believe me. Someone leaked that contract. I would never humiliate you." "Then why did you make me sign it in the first place?" she asked, trembling. "Because I thought I could control everything," he admitted. "I was wrong." She stared at him, her heart splitting between anger and pain. "You are right about one thing," she said finally. "You cannot control everything, especially not me." Then she turned and walked away, her figure disappearing into the storm. That night, the city seemed quieter than usual. Adrian stood by his window, the rain tracing silver lines down the glass. For the first time in years, the empire he had built felt meaningless. His phone buzzed with messages, crisis teams, lawyers, and publicists, all noise. The only thing that mattered was the one voice missing from all of it, Elena. Meanwhile, across the river, in her small apartment, Elena sat alone at her work table, the contract spread open in front of her. The ink of her signature had bled slightly where the rain had touched it. She stared at it for a long time before folding it and placing it inside a drawer. "It was never real," she whispered, though her heart knew better. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, but beneath the storm, both of them were left with the same ache, the kind that only comes when something false becomes painfully, impossibly real. Days passed, but the city did not slow down for heartbreak. The scandal spread like wildfire through news outlets and social media. Every headline carried Elena's name beside Adrian's, twisting their story into something cheap and ugly. At first, she refused to read any of it, but it was impossible to avoid the whispers. Her phone lit up with calls from reporters, old acquaintances, even her sister Alyssa, whose tone carried that familiar mix of pity and envy. "I warned you about men like him," Alyssa said on voicemail. Elena deleted it without listening to the rest. She spent her days at the small workshop she rented in Brooklyn, soldering silver, melting metal, trying to turn pain into something beautiful. But even the fire refused to cooperate. The solder cracked, the designs fell apart, and her hands trembled from exhaustion. At night, when the city lights flickered outside her window, she still saw Adrian's face the way he had looked when the headlines broke. The panic that had cracked through his perfect composure. She hated that part of her still cared. On the other side of the city, Adrian sat in the boardroom of Coal Industries, his reputation unraveling one headline at a time. His advisors urged him to release a statement denying everything, to call it a misunderstanding, to let the woman take the fall. "Distance yourself, sir," one of them said. "It is the only way to protect the company." Adrian looked out at the skyline, his jaw tight. "She does not deserve that. Public perception says otherwise," another added. Adrian turned sharply. "Then change the perception." For the first time in years, his voice carried anger. "Fixing numbers is easy. Fixing trust is not." When the meeting ended, he dismissed everyone and sat alone in the silence. On his desk lay the same contract that had started it all, printed with neat signatures that now felt like a wound. He picked up his phone, hesitating, then dialed a number he still knew by heart. It rang twice before going to voicemail. He did not leave a message. That night, he went back to the one place he had avoided for years, the small art gallery on East 74th Street, where his late fiancée's paintings still hung. He stood before them in the dim light, remembering what love had once cost him. "I thought I could protect her by keeping control," he murmured to the empty room. "I am doing it again." The next morning, Elena woke to an unexpected delivery at her workshop. A plain envelope with her name written in Adrian's handwriting. Inside was a check note, a donation receipt for the same amount he had promised to invest in her jewelry line. The note attached was short. "This is yours. Not charity, not payment, just what was promised. AC." She stared at it for a long time, torn between anger and gratitude. Later that afternoon, she received another message, this time from the Carter Foundation. "Miss Hart, we would like to feature your collection at our upcoming charity exhibition. Mr. Cole personally recommended you." Her heart pounded. It was his way of helping without stepping too close, his silent apology written through action. Still, she hesitated. Attending meant facing him again, facing the eyes, the whispers, the truth. That night, she stood in front of her mirror, holding one of her finished pieces, a pendant, shaped like a broken circle fused together with gold. It symbolized imperfection made whole again. "Maybe it is time," she whispered to her reflection. Across town, Adrian looked over the event program on his desk. Under the headline "Local Artisans for Change," he saw her name printed in bold, Elena Hart. He smiled faintly for the first time in weeks. "She said she would not run forever," he said quietly. The gala was 3 days away, and for the first time, both of them were preparing not to pretend, not to perform, but to finally face what had always been real. The night of the exhibition arrived, and the air inside the Carter Foundation Hall shimmered with soft light and murmured conversations. Rows of crystal chandeliers cast reflections on the marble floors, and the scent of white roses lingered in the air. Elena stood near the entrance, her palms slightly damp, her heart unsteady beneath the elegant black dress she had chosen. Around her, guests admired the art, sipping champagne and exchanging compliments that sounded rehearsed. But none of that mattered. Tonight was not about them. It was about reclaiming her name. On the far wall, her jewelry display gleamed beneath a spotlight. The centerpiece was the pendant she had named Mended, a fractured circle held together by a seam of gold. People stopped to stare, drawn by its quiet strength. A woman whispered, "It feels alive." Elena smiled faintly. "It is," she said. It survived the fire that made it. The crowd moved, and for a brief moment, she felt peace. Then a ripple went through the room. The kind of silence that follows recognition. Adrian Cole had arrived. He wore a simple black suit, no entourage, no press. The whispers grew louder. Some expected confrontation, others a scene. But Adrian walked with calm precision until he reached Elena's display. He looked at the pendant for a long time before speaking. "It is beautiful," he said quietly. "Like the woman who made it." The words hung in the air, soft but deliberate. She turned to face him, her voice steady but cool. "You should not be here." "Maybe not," he admitted. "But I needed to see this. To see you." "Why?" she asked. "To fix what the world broke?" He shook his head. "No, to fix what I broke." His honesty disarmed her. The crowd watched from a distance, pretending not to. "You do not owe me anything," she said. I know, he replied, but I owe you the truth. He took a deep breath, the kind that carries years of regret. I built a life on control, Elena, on contracts and conditions. But what I felt for you never fit inside any of them. Her throat tightened. Feelings are not enough. No, he said, but action is. He stepped aside, and a representative from the foundation approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's exhibition would not exist without the generosity of one anonymous donor. He requested that the gallery be renamed in honor of someone whose integrity inspired this event. The screen behind them flickered to life. The new sign appeared in gold letters. The Elena Hard Art and Design Initiative. Gasps filled the hall. Elena turned toward him, her eyes wide. What did you do? Nothing you did not already earn, Adrian said. I just made sure the world remembered it. For a long moment neither spoke. Then she whispered, You made it impossible to stay angry. Good, he said softly, because I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for a chance to be honest. Around them, applause began to rise, slow and sincere. Elena looked at him, her expression unreadable, then smiled through the blur of tears. Honesty is a good start. And for the first time since their world had fallen apart, the distance between them began to close. When the applause faded, the lights dimmed, and the rest of the evening unfolded like a quiet dream. Guests lingered to congratulate Elena, shaking her hand, praising her courage and art, but her mind was elsewhere. Every word Adrian had said echoed in her chest. He stayed close yet respectful, keeping just enough distance as if he understood that trust could not be rushed. When the event finally ended, and the hall emptied, Elena stood alone in front of her display, staring at the pendant under the soft light. She could feel him approach even before he spoke. You stayed, he said gently. I thought you might disappear again. I thought about it, she admitted. But then I realized running only gives pain a longer life. Adrian nodded, his expression softened by humility she had never seen before. You taught me something I forgot, Elena. That love is not about control, it is about courage. She turned toward him, her eyes shimmering. And honesty. Especially honesty, he said. The silence between them was full of meaning, a calm after months of chaos. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper, the edges worn. Do you remember this? He asked. She frowned, recognizing her own signature. The contract. Yes, he said, unfolding it carefully. The one that began everything. He took out a lighter and, without breaking her gaze, set the edge of the paper alight. The flame danced briefly before consuming the words that had once defined their boundaries. That chapter is over, he said, watching the ashes drift away in the cool air. Whatever happens next, it will not be written in terms and conditions. Elena's breath caught. You always did have a flair for grand gestures. Maybe, Adrian replied with a faint smile. But this one is not for show. He reached into his jacket again and revealed a small velvet box. Inside, instead of a diamond, was a gold ring engraved with the same broken circle motif as her pendant. It is not a proposal, he said quickly. Not yet. It is a promise. To keep learning what real love is, one honest day at a time. Her fingers trembled as she touched the ring. You could have chosen anyone, she whispered. But you chose the woman who nearly ruined your reputation. You never ruined it, he said. You rebuilt it into something worth keeping. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they did not fall from heartbreak. Adrian, what am I supposed to do with you? Whatever you want, he said simply. Stay angry if you need to, or come home. She laughed softly through her tears. Home. You make it sound so easy. It will not be, he admitted. But I would rather face the hard truth with you than live another lie without you. The sincerity in his voice left no space for doubt. Elena looked at the ring again, the golden circle gleaming against her skin, its imperfect seam shining under the gallery light. Then maybe, she said slowly, it is time I stopped pretending. Adrian smiled, relief breaking across his face like sunrise. Then we start over, he said. No contracts, no conditions, just us. As the last guests departed and the staff dimmed the final lights, the two of them stood together in the quiet glow of the exhibition that bore her name. For the first time, their story felt real, imperfect, unplanned, and exactly as it should be. A year later, the city had changed in small, almost invisible ways. Spring sunlight poured through the glass walls of a new art gallery in Soho, its sign gleaming in gold letters that read, "The Heart and Coal Foundation for Creative Youth." Inside, Children painted at long tables while volunteers moved between them with smiles and soft encouragement. At the center of it all stood Elena, her hair tied loosely, her hands speckled with paint. She looked peaceful, her laughter bright as she guided a young girl's trembling hand across a canvas. When Adrian entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee, the noise in the room softened as if the world recognized the gravity between them. "You missed your board meeting," she teased, glancing over her shoulder. "I rescheduled it," he said. This seemed more important. He handed her the cup and watched her take a sip. "Still black, no sugar," he said, smiling. "You remember." "I remember everything," he replied quietly. They stood together, watching the children for a while. The silence between them warm and full of shared history. It had not been an easy year. There had been headlines, whispers, rebuilding, and sleepless nights. But through it all, they had chosen honesty over perfection, patience over pride. "You know," Elena said softly, "I used to think love was something that happened once like a spark you either catch or lose forever." "And now?" Adrian asked. She turned toward him, her smile gentle. "Now I know it is something you build, one truth at a time." He reached for her hand, the same hand that had once signed their contract, now free of any terms or conditions. "I never thanked you," he said. "For what?" "For teaching me that integrity is not weakness. It is the foundation of everything that lasts." Before she could answer, one of the children called her name. "Miss Elena, can you help me fix this?" She squeezed Adrian's hand lightly and walked over to the little boy's table, kneeling beside him. "Nothing is broken," she said, adjusting the paintbrush in his hand. "You just have to keep going." Adrian watched her, his heart settling with a calm he had not known in years. When she returned, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "What is this?" she asked. "Something I have been working on," he said. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a marriage license application with both of their names already printed at the top. Elena stared at it, stunned, then looked up to find him kneeling. Not with a ring this time, but with the same humility that had brought him back to her. "I do not want a contract," he said softly. "I want a commitment, not to own you, but to walk beside you, no conditions, no pretending." Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. "Adrian Cole, are you asking me to marry you?" "I am asking you to keep building this life with me," he said, "as partners, as equals, as home." Around them, the children clapped without even knowing why, their laughter echoing through the sunlit room. Elena nodded, smiling through her tears. "Then my answer is yes," she said. "Because this is the most beautiful mistake that ever happened to me." Adrian stood, pulling her close as the room erupted in applause. And for once, there were no headlines, no contracts, no doubts, just 2 people who had learned that love, at its truest, was never about perfection. It was about choosing each other again and again every single day.